Hello, everyone. I know it's the kind of towards the end of the day, so I'll try to keep this nice and snappy and on point. My name's Eyal. I'm the creative director at Product Madness. We have a booth 2 floors upstairs. We make games, mostly kind of social, free-to-play kind of slots games, some casino stuff. We didn't start off there, but that's where we are now. What do I do? Oh, here we go. Cool, and I want to share with you some of my learnings or lessons as a kind of through my experience as a creative director. When I built this deck, I was really trying to think of stuff that, you know, there's a lot of standard advice that a lot of people give, and I try to think of the advice that I wasn't given when I started my career, and what I would have liked to hear when I was maybe a bit younger. Just out of curiosity, how many people here are either artists or managing artists or want to one day manage artists? Hands up. Cool. All right, so hopefully you'll find this interesting, and for the rest of you, hopefully you will as well. Okay, so just a little bit about me. Kind of my background is computer sciences and fine arts. I kind of led my first art team when I was 19, so very young, but that kind of really helped me off. I have a kind of a background in game design. Started off in consoles back in Australia, and I was the first, I would say, employee back at Product Madness. Back then, really, I was one artist. We were working on about 5 games, or I was working on 5 games, so I kind of had to do a little bit of everything. The company grew and scaled. We hired a few more artists. We were about 4 artists working on 30 games. So again, we had to do everything: user acquisition, UX, UI, animation, all that kind of stuff. And over the time, we got more and more, we increased in scale, and we started to fine-tune what we are, to where we are right now, where we are about 30 artists kind of globally in Product Madness working on only kind of 4 games. So we did get smarter, we got more specific, we got more experience in specific parts of the game design process. So these are the 5 lessons that I want to kind of talk to you guys about. We'll just jump right into it. So lesson number 1, pick a color of Crocs and buy them already. So I kind of put an example of this kind of working mood board that we had for one of our projects. And I think this is kind of a really good example of where usually you are at the beginning of a design process, where everyone kind of throws everything at the wall and we kind of see what sticks. It's part of the process and it's great, but I would say one of the really big challenges there is that really when you're working on a game, you really don't have enough time to explore all the different ideas to their fullest. And really that creates a lot of problems down the line. Mostly because, and that's kind of the second point, really simpler concepts look better at first and better concepts look messy. So really when you're starting to think about kind of any sort of creative work, really the stuff you can throw together in a day or 2, by definition will always be easier and simpler to look at. And that kind of stuff is a bit of a red herring because it could really lead you down kind of, honestly, the wrong path in the kind of the wrong direction. And really, if you're anything like us, I guess, to some extent, we start to work on the art at the same time that we kind of start to work on other bits of the game design, maybe kind of where it fits in our portfolio of games. So really, things tend to change, and that makes things difficult. Where 6 months on the track, all of a sudden your brief changes on you, which is fine, but you got to be aware of that. So really, my biggest advice for anyone who's kind of doing this stuff is the first thing you want to do is get your team rowing in the same direction and just trust the process. So even if there are 20 ideas on the table, you're not sure which is the best one, you got to pick something and you got to start running with it, right? And then you're going to start fine-tuning and correcting it as you go. And that kind of brings to the last point that 90% of what your design needs is more time, not a better starting point. If I think back to my experience, I would say that the majority of those projects that ended up looking, I would say, underwhelming, they didn't get there because, the initial brief wasn't strong enough or the initial direction wasn't there. They got there just because we ran out of time. We ran out of iterations. We ran out of polish. So really, you pick something, you stick to it, and you trust that by the end of it, you will get to something great. And that's really where your team comes in and the process comes in. And this is for anyone who's kind of leading the team. I think really, your job as I would say, kind of the creative director or the art director of this process is really just to be the one who kind of comes in and makes that final call. And it's not because you're smarter or you have more experience or anything like that. It's honestly because this is your job. So your job is to look at the 20 different directions, pick one and say, all right, guys, this is what I'm going to bet on. Let's try this. Let's all work down the line because ultimately, If the game doesn't look good or something is broken, it's on you as the person who's managing this process. So you just got to kind of own up to it and take that risk. All right, lesson number 2, let's get technical. Really, if I think of most traditional game studios, the creative team only owns part of the creative process. So, every studio will be a little bit different, but if I kind of try to ballpark some sort of process, so you have the art team kind of working on the UX, the UI, the concept, they do some final design. And then at some point, they just kind of hand it over to, I would say, an integration team or the dev team. That's where you get integration, you get optimization, and then you get some testing, QA, something's broken, goes back to either the devs or the art, and that's the process. So what's the problem? The problem is, the art team only owns part of that process, as we saw. The other thing is that devs, they cost more than artists, right? And that's just a sad truth of the industry. It means that when you are in the process and you need to start polishing, if something's broken on, I don't know, the UPI or something is broken in the payment integration versus the art, the payment integration is going to get priority. So the art team is always going to lose priority for core dev stuff. Developers hate to implement art. Everyone does. I mean, that's just, that's not the creative part, that's busy work. No one likes that. Optimization later on, when you do draw call, all kind of stuff, that's all handled by the devs. That's a problem. They don't want to do it. And, when you talk about what is a really well-polished game, really a well-polished game is where you really can't see the gap between the art and dev. So how do you fix that, basically? So first of all, you start by getting technical artists and artists who are technical. Right? You get artists who can do all that kind of stuff. You, I would say, as the creative director or the art director, you fight for a pipeline that you can own. So you do your homework, you learn the industry, you pick a tech stack that your art team can take ownership of. And you take on the responsibilities, not just the benefits. What does that mean? It means if you need your artists to start being able to push and pull into a Git, for example, you need to start using Jira, you need to start doing draw call optimizations, because if you screw something up, you break the whole game. That's part of it. You take on that responsibility as a team, and it's worth it. And finally, kind of be strategic, not tactical in your thinking. Meaning, again, moving a studio to a place where now the artist can be part of the development process, that could take 6 months. And you know what? It's worth it, because it'll cost you a lot now, but ultimately it'll allow artists to do much cooler things. I'll also say that, tech art means something different in every company, and, I speak to different studios and different tech artists. A lot of studios, when you talk to someone who's a tech artist, they are an implementer. They're the person at the end of the art funnel who put the assets into the game. We're not built that way. In our studio, every artist is an implementer. Every artist puts stuff into, let's say Unity, checks it, can QA it. And I think that's a huge benefit for us. So again, when you're thinking of what is a tech artist, that would be my biggest recommendation. For example, I wanted to give you guys a really quick example. These are some old examples now from a game called Cashman Casino that we did once upon a time. If you could play the first video, please. Cool. And this is the second video. So really want to show this is the same artist, right? And it's not that his skill sets were lacking in the first video or that anything really changed. Really what happened over the course of a couple of months, we built up the capabilities to give him more and more control into what he wants to do. Now, all this stuff may seem pretty simple, but to be honest, on a technical level, there was a lot of integration that needed to happen there between, counters and, the coins coming out and all that kind of stuff and how it runs on the game. And this was the exact same artist. He spent the same amount of time, and we just got significantly better results just because we increased the process and we increased the responsibility of the art team. This is a bit of behind the scenes of really how we built. So, the old system was really just kind of timeline animations and, it was Sisyphic work and it was horrible. And really through technical art and tech art and getting the artists to control more of the pipeline, we really started building more tools and more systems to allow us to do just really cool stuff. And nowadays we can produce just significantly better looking games for, I would say kind of a fraction at the time, and we can also assure that when it gets into the game, it looks great and looks as the artist intended, because really it's the artist who puts it into the game and the artist who tests it, ultimately. Cool, so this is kind of what I'm trying to push for. Get it to the point where really there's an animation, your artist can build to device, they can check it on device, does it look good, does it feel a bit choppy, okay, do I need to optimize draw calls? Okay, I'll go back, I'll do it, I'll integrate it, I'll check it again. Big stuff. All right. Lesson number 3, creative team Moneyball. So you guys seen the movie Moneyball? It's Brad Pitt, where he kind of builds a baseball team through stats, basically. This is kind of the quote from the movie. And I kind of subscribe to this philosophy because I think it makes a lot of sense. Part of the challenges behind building an art team is that, honestly, strong artists don't necessarily make strong art teams. And that, I think you could say the same thing about, developers or product managers or anything like that, really. The requirements really will always change. So even if you have an amazing team and they can do amazing work, you know what? The next title that we need to launch needs to be in HTML5. And all of a sudden, all this expertise is, I won't say meaningless, but you're kind of back to square one. Hiring is always a gamble. So even if you interview people, you vet them, you love them, they're fantastic, you really don't know what you're going to get. And, we've been surprised in both ways, and it's just the way it is. And I would say rising user acquisition costs. So if you're a studio and you're scaling, if you want to get, I don't know, let's say 3-4 really good artists, yeah, you can do that. It's quite feasible. When you get to a place where, you're trying to hire your 21st artist or your 31st artist, things start to get really, really tricky. You start to, poach people from their companies. You're importing artists from overseas. There is much higher cost to getting talent at that scale, which is, just part of the challenge. So how do, I go around that, or what would I recommend to anyone? So first of all, think project, then team, then person. Because maybe sometimes really what you need to hire isn't what you think you need to hire. Don't be scared to hire up or down, which is, something maybe quite silly, but really, sometimes you need to get really strong, much better people. And you know what? Sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes maybe you need to get someone who can do busy work, and it's okay to get a junior in. That's all absolutely fine. A team with all seniors usually doesn't function very well. You want to build a really good hierarchy within your team. So kind of know what role you're trying to fill. Also trying to think, honestly, what are you trying to hire for? So are you hiring for scale, right? So do I need another of this type of artist? Do I need expertise? Am I trying to get a better 3D guy? Or maybe I need a completely new skill set of capabilities. So I need to get a whatever, web animator. That's what I'm looking for. And each one of these things would really change the way you view who you're hiring and make your hiring much easier. Ultimately, everyone says this, and I agree, you're hiring personalities, not skill sets. There's a lot of books about this, but really they say, and I agree, you hire based on the potential of each candidate. And I think that's very true. But here I would say you also want to hire someone who could gel well with the rest of the team, and that's super important. And by hiring all the right stuff, you're growing the team in the right direction. This is just a kind of really silly example that I kind of put together, but this is one team and this is the other team. And really when I'm kind of thinking about, who do I need to get for this team, I could have a mental list in my head, and this is all just kind of, for the sake of, just kind of nonsense. Maybe this is the way I kind of look at the artist, but really I kind of know that, for the fourth artist on team number 2, really I'm looking for an illustration, I'm looking for soft skills, I'm looking for animation, a bit of technical, because everything else is kind of covered, and I'm okay with that kind of artist, and that's really what I'm looking for. And that really kind of helps me narrow down who I'm looking for and kind of, I would say, filter between with the important stuff and I would say the kind of irrelevant stuff that's, you might love a candidate, but really easy filling the needs of your team. This is a pretty, I would say, maybe a counterintuitive statement, or maybe people will argue with me about this, but I genuinely believe this. Sometimes hiring someone now and training up for 6 months is better than holding up for the perfect candidates and getting them in 6 months' time. It's my personal opinion on these things. For all the reasons above, I strongly recommend that. Lesson 4, everyone should be replaceable, including you. So no matter what you do, people will leave. There's nothing you can do about that. People will get better offers, or they want to go back to, whatever, country they're from, or they're just bored. And that's all absolutely fine. You want to be there for their journeys. You also want to kind of do it in a really nice way. So with that in mind, understand that whenever someone leaves, it's going to cause a huge disruption. And again, as you scale, it only gets harder. There was a recent article that I read where one big organization tried to quantify really what's the cost of someone leaving, and they said it was roughly 6 months of salary. That's the actual cost when someone leaves by the time they get someone, train someone, find them, and they start being productive. That's a pretty scary number. how do you kind of, I guess, go about mitigating that problem? We start with succession plans for everyone. Yes, that also means you could be the creative director or the art director. You always want to kind of have in the back of your mind this idea that, at some point you want to have someone on your team to be able to step up and do your job, and that's important. And you want to make sure that everyone on your team also has that in the back of their mind. Invest in your people, make sure they are investment worthy. Like, I will say honestly, Product Madness is one of the better companies that I've had the, I would say, privilege of working with as far as investing in people. Like I said, we make kind of free-to-play casino games. About 4 months ago, we went the entire art team to Vegas to learn a bit more about the social casino world, to see what an inside of a casino looks like, to talk to the studios and make these games. That's a huge investment from the company, and I think it's amazing and it's worthwhile. And I think for me, as the kind of the champion of that process, I was able to go into my MD and say, listen, it's a lot of money, but it's worth it because these are people that are worth investing in. If someone does want to leave, and that's absolutely fine, don't kind of stretch it out, break up quickly, it's okay, these things happen, don't make a fuss. And also break up amicably, because honestly, you never know. This person might come back. We've had multiple artists specifically that have left the company to pursue their own dreams, and at some point they've kind of reached back out and said, listen, we did this, we enjoyed it, we'd like to come back, and that's also great. So, don't take it personally, keep the door always open, that's fantastic. So really when you talk about what a successor is or what it is when you do kind of succession planning, a lot of people get really worried when you start thinking about succession planning. A lot of people get really worried about the fact that they're going to hire someone that's better than them, or they're hiring the person who's going to replace them. Really, I can't stress this enough. That is the dumbest way to look at hiring, honestly, across the board. You want to perpetually hire people that are better than you. That is just the way you should be going. Like, the stronger your team, the better you're going to look. And when you're trying to look for your own personal replacement, like recently I had to go and kind of write like a job spec of like what it is I think I do, and I started off by writing a 4-page document, which was ridiculous. I don't do 4-page worth of stuff, but I put everything in there, and then I went and kind of trimmed it down, and really I boiled it down to a page, because really there are things that I do because it's me, there's things that I do because I'm the only guy who can do it, and that's really what your role is, and that's what you should be looking for. Every artist has their own journey, and this is a big problem with art teams in general. As you move up the studio hierarchy, there are fewer roles, and that's just the way it goes in a pyramid. Strong artists aren't always strong managers, and that's that's just the truth that we need to be aware of. Strong managers also aren't necessarily more important than strong artists, and that's also something that we need to be aware of. So what are the actions behind that? So first of all, in every studio, an art director should not be the end game of every artist on your team. All right? You need to be transparent with the available roles to all your team and what their requirements are. By the way, I just, reading again, like lack of regular reviews from managers was the number 2 reasons in a survey that I read why people left the company, which is insane. So talk about like the importance of keeping someone in there, reviewing, talking to them. This is, by the way, a succession plan that we put together. So it goes all the way from junior artist to art director, what the art requirements are. As you see, like the responses grow more and more. And this is a document that every artist on my team has access to. They can see exactly where they are on the progress, where they want to go. And, some artists are happy, like being a senior artist. That's absolutely fine. There's no problem with that. Some want to move into management. That's also absolutely fine. Really, from my side, I found it's mostly an educational process for the studios. It's okay that a senior artist is as important as an art director. It's okay that they get paid accordingly. And that's just part of the training that you need to kind of instill in the greater studio. All right, I'm going a bit quickly now. I don't have that much more time. I want to make sure there's time for questions. That was it. Thank you very much for me. Oh, sorry, that was my plug. We are hiring in all departments, so if you're keen, come join us upstairs. Any questions? We have 60 seconds or so left.
Hi, thanks very much for your talk. I'm an art director in Rovio, and we're having trouble getting all the different art teams to really talk to each other, and it's something I've seen in a lot of the companies I've worked where the artists and different teams kind of sit in their own. I was wondering since you're also dealing with quite a few artists, how you manage that cross-team conversation?
So I would say, again, it kind of depends on the nature of the studio. Again, in our studio specifically, we try to get the artist to handle everything from end to end. And I think what that also created is a world where artists really have to interact with one another all the time. Because they need to share advice, they need help. A lot of people will be out of their depth in certain element of the processes. And that's fantastic. That really encourages interdepartmental, I would say, kind of coordination. I also really strongly believe in moving artists around between teams, getting people to step in and help, and that obviously makes things fantastic. So, this is the way we did it in Heart of Vegas. This is how we're going to do it in Cashman. This is how we're going to do it in, Fa Fun. That really builds a strong connection as well. It depends mostly also who you hire. Like I say this in every interview, if you're the kind of artist that enjoys sitting down, putting their headphones on, illustrating, 9 to 5 and then going home, maybe this isn't the studio for you. I want to build a studio with an art team that is cohesive and they talk together. And then, as an art director, you can put certain elements in place. We do, weekly catch-ups, and we do what we call rev sessions, where everyone has to show their work on a kind of bi-weekly process. And we have, art director kind of circles where we just try to kind of create this, I would say, brain trust that people can feedback from one another. But you just, I would say, I know we're going a bit over time, but it just starts from the top. If you dedicate time and effort to making sure your department talks to one another, then that becomes a priority. And it really has to kind of go like that. I hope that helped.